you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all things personal safety. I'm your host, Sophia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. This episode is sponsored by Big Tex Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their own staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you, as the consumer, reach out, you are taken care of. Today, we have Mike Seeklander on the show. I feel like this is long overdue. I've wanted to have you on for a while. I've been told by nearly every guest on the show that I need to get you on. So I'm so happy you're here, Mike. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. And we should actually tell your audience how much fun we were having in the pre-show. We probably would have spent an hour on the pre-show talking about fighting and all kinds of cool things. So thanks for having me on. I'm actually, if you can't see it, I'm actually here in the Live Fire studio. We were doing some content later today, and we could talk more about that later on in the show. So do you want me to go into my bio a little bit, or where do you want to go from here? Because
Please go on. This is about you.
So I will forewarn you and the listeners or viewers, whenever I give my bio, for me, it feels like I could never hold down a job because I went from thing to thing to thing. So I have to promise you it was always for the next best thing. So anyways, grew up in the mountains of Wyoming and Idaho, and in 1990 decided after high school I would join the Marine Corps. So I went to the Marine Corps, and I just happened to join literally right before Desert Storm and Desert Shield. I don't know how old you are, Sophia, but that was a long time ago. But back in the day, Saddam Hussein invaded a small country called Kuwait. And so I was right there in the middle of that. I had signed up to be a normal infantry Marine and did really well on some testing in boot camp. And then they moved me into intel. So I ended up doing intelligence for my entire time in the Marine Corps, and then later on got a secondary MOS of primary marksmanship and combat engineer. Did some competitive shooting, mainly with the rifle, high power in the Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, moved on to law enforcement in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'd always wanted to be a cop, so I got into the county sheriff's office there, the Knoxville Police Department later on with the city. And then fast forward a few more years, 9/11 happened, and I had the opportunity to get hired by the Air Marshal Service right after 9/11, and went to the range with all of these very old senior instructors, retired Navy SEALs and special mission unit guys, just really high-end guys. I was a young, maybe 28-year-old former Marine, former police officer that had been competitively shooting. And I outshot them all, and they said, okay, well, I guess you're now the lead firearms instructor. So I took over that program as the lead firearms instructor.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, worked for FLETC as a senior firearms instructor, and then later on left the government to come out to Tulsa to run the U.S. Shooting Academy. So, and then I've been shooting, is semi-professional, is that the right term for shooters? Semi-professionally for years, sponsored a long time ago by Smith & Wesson. Now I'm sponsored by Wilson Combat. So I've been shooting and training, and as we talked about, doing martial arts since 1992, I guess. So I told you, it's like I can't hold down a job.
That doesn't sound like that at all. I also admitted to you before we got on the podcast that I dropped out of medical school. So I'm not judging you. I mean, it's always about moving to what you think is best for yourself and the next step. Your path makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of growth and building up to where you are now and there. It makes total sense to me, at least.
Yeah, well, I was always looking for the next opportunity, and I know there are guys and gals out there like, well, you should stay in a job and retire. I was not. I've never been afraid to try something different, So when I had opportunities, and I worked really hard for those opportunities, I took them, and it's led me to a great career. I mean, granted, full disclosure, I could have stayed with the federal government, and I would be retired, probably GS-14, maybe senior executive service right now. So, but then again, it's not just about the money. Like you said, you dropped out of med school, you're doing this, you have a passion. I think, you have to follow your passion. You only live once.
Absolutely. And what you did takes a lot of courage. I think that word gets left out of the equation when there are, like expectations from others. At the end of the day, it takes so much courage to move to a different path, especially when you've built so much on the other path. So I commend you for that. It's very encouraging, motivating for me, and I'm sure to the listeners. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's so impressive. So your martial arts, you said 1992 is when you started your martial arts journey. What did that look like for you, and what does it look like now?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, in the Marine Corps, I had a buddy that I was with. And so a little more about my background. I was always a bigger, stronger, grew up on farms and ranches, threw hay bales around, just physicality was always fine. I was big and strong. I had that, but I really didn't have any confidence. I didn't have a lot of fighting background experience. I played football and I, tumbled around, but I just didn't know what my abilities were. Even in the Marine Corps, you get combatives training, but it's not like you're going to go and do a bunch of really good martial arts or fighting. And I had a buddy in the barracks with me and he said, "Hey, I'm going to train at this place. You should come with me." He said, "It's a pretty cool place. I'm going to go check it out." So I went to this place, Jacksonville, North Carolina. And we show up at the dojo, and it is literally a shack in the middle of the woods. I'm not joking, in North Carolina. And when we went into the dojo, in all of the sheetrock on all of the walls is busted out. It's obvious people are hitting these walls. And I get to know my instructor, old retired Marine named Tommy Mossman. And in the first 3 minutes, he introduced himself. We bow in. I learned the bow in process. We're all in bare feet, of course. I wasn't in a gi, but a lot of his students were in gis. And he said, "Okay, let's go." And he runs out of the dojo. So we're all in bare feet, mind you. And his dojo is on a dirt road. And here's the story I wanted to tell you. And he takes off running. And I'm like, "But I'm bare feet. I'm in bare feet." So he runs down the gravel road in bare feet, takes a right on the asphalt highway, and we go for a 2.5 to 3 mile run in bare feet. Now, the tail end of the run was through a field next to the dojo, and it was all at that place. It was all about body hardening. I learned later on that, at that point in time, maybe not intelligently, I know you were in the medical field, my knuckles were golf ball sized knuckles from hitting what's called a makawari. I'm sure you're familiar with that, conditioning the elbows, conditioning the knees. So my first experience was a 3 mile run in bare feet at this place on a 100-degree Jacksonville, North Carolina day. My buddy, lovingly, that brought me to the place never went back. And I guess I was too hard-headed to quit or whatever else. And, so it was crazy. And it was a very hardcore. I mean, it was full contact, bare knuckle karate. We were somewhat limited to punching to the face, but full leg kicks. I mean, you did a little Muay Thai, I think, right? So it was hardcore stuff. But here's the thing, though, Sophia, I never broke my nose. You want to talk about your experiences?
Yes. And I'm laughing because I've definitely, I've said this on the podcast a few times, and I almost feel like I need to say it because I was definitely one of those people who got my blue belt and then quit. And I even get some DMs here and there that say things like, "Tell me you aren't that person that got your blue belt and then dropped out of jiu-jitsu." And I always write back and I'm like, actually, yeah, that's about what happened. And I was telling Mike before we hit record that, I've broken my nose a total of 4 or 5 times. I've had 2 reconstructive nose surgeries. And the first nose break is what really screwed me over. It was when I was 13, and it was a knee to the face, and it was bloody. There was a big crack, and my nose was permanently pushed to one side of my face. So it was definitely intense enough to where the successive nose breaks were very easy to do just because my nose was already so broken and inflamed and whatnot. So yes, it was honestly, at the time, I didn't think it was a big deal until I realized I couldn't breathe very well. But yeah, I'm glad I fixed it with surgery, but it's definitely something that I miss, the full contact sparring and karate, full contact gyms with karate are so impressive. I remember thinking when I was in my traditional Korean martial arts, it's called Musuwon, I wanted something more intense. And my uncle, he's a like 3rd degree black belt in karate, and he was instructing at the time, was teaching in very similar to what you kind of described, this warehouse in the middle of nowhere, Poto, Oklahoma. And I was kind of skeptical, but I trusted him with my life. So when he said it would be worth it to try, I believed him. I went with him, and it was full contact sparring. There were no padding. The floors were wooden. It was in an old church, I think. I don't know exactly what the building was for, but it was kind of shaped like a church. And we didn't do any running on asphalt, so I didn't get to experience that. But we did do a lot of shin-to-shin conditioning. And I think, were you describing the like wooden board with the leather wrapped around it?
Yeah, so ours were actually 4x4s with rope. So we had a line of 4x4s with rope wrapped around them that we would just, and it's not a heavy process. It's a light tapping, and every single day we started and finished with some sort of knuckle or elbow conditioning, and it was pretty hardcore. So,
oh yes, I can't imagine. I mean, wow, that is so impressive. So, do you still train it to this day, or did you kind of transition into another?
Well, since we're admitting about our blue belt stoppages, I'll tell you mine. So I was in North Carolina. I trained at that place until I got my black belt. Certainly very proud of that. And then several years later, this thing happened called the UFC. And of course, I watched Royce Gracie. I'm sure you're familiar with Royce Gracie, win the first several UFCs. And then I just so happened to have another Marine Corps opportunity that was in California. So when I went to California for what's called active duty special work, it was counter drug work. I looked up the Gracie Academy in Torrance, California, and I went and trained with Royce Gracie and Horian Gracie and Kaiki and all these guys at the Gracie Academy. And that was literally about a year or so, or 2 years after he had won the first UFC. So it was crazy popular, and I did it every day. I mean, I trained every day, and I got my blue belt, and I went through their instructor training program, and then I got hired by the Knoxville Police Department back in Tennessee. So I left, and I went back, and so I stopped just like you did after I got my blue belt, and I trained a little bit here and there. I always trained on my own, but I didn't do any organized BJJ anywhere, and kind of paused really. I did on and off until I ended up in Tulsa and met my current instructor, Christian Dare, who owns Clinch MMA. So now I'm back into it. I haven't trained for the last 2 months. I kind of tore up a thumb, but I've worked my way up to brown belt. Maybe it was like his trying to humor me, give me a brown belt, but I'm a brown belt now. Not a lot of people know that in BJJ. I'm going to keep going until I get my black belt. But I had a big break, just like you did. So here's the deal. Maybe you're pausing. You could always go back to it. And Sophia, you're not supposed to break your nose in grappling. So if you go back, you shouldn't break your nose anymore. I'm just telling you.
And that's what I told my mom. She begged me not to go back, and my surgeon did too after the first surgery. And I was like, you don't break your nose in jiu-jitsu. Like, that's not possible. And my surgeon told me, like, your nose isn't like other people's. It's like a glass nose, and you're rolling around, you're smashing your face. And of course, like, head control is so important. So, I went back into it, full swing, and I just broke it again. And I felt so silly afterwards, but you're exactly right. There are ways around it. So like at Craig Douglas's course, he has those helmets, and I was able to grapple full contact, not worry about my nose at all until the helmet started moving. And then like someone at some point, like got some type of hold on me. So the helmet was like pushing up against my nose, and I was like, they couldn't hear me, but I was like, hey, like, stop, it's hurting. But that was really great. Like, to get back into it then felt so nice. So you're right. You really are right.
Yeah. And I understand you have a nose that certainly might be more fragile, but you could probably wearing headgear. It sounds so boring and dorky and whatever else. But maybe, one of the things that I valued a lot in the last few years, especially since you're so busy, is privates. If you could find the right instructor, do it private. And then they know exactly what you got going on, and they're not going to do heavy sight control on your face or whatever else. So that's
a really good point.
Yeah.
That's so true. And congratulations on your brown belt. That is very impressive. Seriously.
Thank you. I've told myself I'm not going to quit until I get to black. And as you know, in BJJ, it's a long path. So I'm sure I want to have years more before I even think about getting to that level, because I want to know I earned it. So
it's a great mentality to be in. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's definitely not a get your black belt quick scheme at all. Like I respect jiu-jitsu so much for that reason. You don't have little like babies running around with black belts on and little crisp black belts and teaching classes.
Yeah, for doing a form. I won't even go down that road, but you're right. I know.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. So I'd love to kind of dive into your experience with firearms and when you started instructing and what that looks like for you.
Sure. So, I grew up in Wyoming and Idaho, so I did hunt and shot, always had pellet guns, BB guns, and I really kind of fell in love with shooting, specifically handgun shooting, when I call him my uncle. He was actually one of my dad's best friends, another former Marine, used to come to the house, and he was a police officer, and every year he would come to the house 2 or 3 times. I think he lived in South Dakota, but anyways, he would bring his police issue revolver, and we would go to this back pit behind the house, and he would let me shoot. And that was literally the high point of my year. Yeah. And later on, I bought my own revolvers, and way before I owned a semi-automatic, and just started shooting. I mean, even in I'll give you another interesting story. As a junior in high school, I can remember going to school, coming home, and my everyday routine was to grab my, at that point in time, weird firearm, Ruger Red Hawk 41 Magnum. Wow. Most of your listeners probably don't even know what I'm talking about there, but I would take it out to this dirt bank, snow bank, put a paper plate up, and practice 50 rounds. And then I would go into my single stage Lee loading press after I was done and reload 50 rounds. Then I would go do my homework or chores or whatever, and then go to bed and repeat it the next day. I mean, I did that for years in high school. Until I actually left and joined the Marine Corps, and then kind of found out about IPSC, USPSA, and ordered a bunch of gear while I was deployed to the Marine Corps, and then got into competitive shooting, and kind of the sky's the limit from there. It just got it in my blood, and it's literally all I want to do, along with, law enforcement. I've always kind of paralleled, I'm one of the few, I think, guys out there that's paralleled competitive shooting and, tactical or law enforcement or military kind of at the same time. And I've been doing it ever since, as much as I possibly can. Like I said, I guess I would say I'm almost a full-time pro shooter now, but I spend almost, as much time instructing. That's not true. I spend more time training and doing content, for Wilson Combat and Live Fire as well. So.
Yes. And your personal Instagram, or I guess your business / personal page, has so many good tips and instructional pieces. So for anyone listening who just wants a steady source of instructional material, definitely check out Mike's Instagram, and I'll have that linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. But yes, so cool to see you do that. And I told you this before the show, but I love how candid you are on camera. You're out there training, and it's almost like you know what you're doing is valuable, and you want someone else to hear it and be able to apply it to themselves. And it comes from a very genuine place, it seems. So it's wonderful to see.
You can say it was very raw and unfiltered, and I'm not as cool looking as you on your Instagram posts. And I should probably take more time. No, I appreciate you saying that, honestly, because I've been doing this so many years. I hope that people, I hope they learn and appreciate what I'm trying to teach them. And I've been in front of a camera teaching for many years as well. So that's it's kind of my thing. Like I said, I'll throw it back at you. I truly appreciate your content as well. I'm very impressed with your professionalism and enjoy watching your content. So
thank you so much. And there's something to be said about the other side of filtered. If you filter too much, one, you don't connect to your audience, and two, if you're like me, you wait until it's perfect to post. And then of course you set that expectation so high, it's never perfect enough. So it's almost like you're so good at your craft that you know that you can just pop on and share something. And that is so valuable. It was kind of more of my point, but I totally understand like being out there and just wanting to show a good piece of information. So that's amazing. Do you still compete currently in USPSA and IPSC? What's your like spread right now? Do you try to get certain number of competitions in every month, or?
Yeah, I do. So I actually very actively compete, even at my age, and I don't have an expectation that maybe I'm going to outrun or be able to run with some of the younger, faster shooters. Although I work like I can, I push like I can do those things. But yeah, right now I'm actually getting ready for the Carry Optics Nationals, USPSA. It is by far right now probably the deepest talent pool out there. It is incredibly talented. The shooters at the top of that game are incredible. And, this year, actually, I stopped training BJJ. I actually tweaked my thumb, and I've been shooting, like I said, semi-professionally for years. But I had this epiphany. I'm like, Mike, what do you? I will get my black belt. I will keep on that path. But during the shooting season, what do I really want to accomplish? What am I trying to do? As you know, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. So I prioritize shooting right now. And I'm training 5 days a week. I train 5 days a week, sometimes 6, on the range. And then of course there's all the fitness and stretching and all the things as well. So I actively compete. I don't shoot as many club matches. I find the local club matches I'm competing in. And a lot of times I'll be traveling and teaching. So that kind of overlaps maybe the state or section championships that I could be at on a regular basis. But I'll shoot, 2 nationals and 1 world. The IDPA sport is the worlds this year, so I'll compete there. And then I'm constantly working at it. I just try to dig and push.
Absolutely.
I need something. I have to have something I'm training toward.
Yes. Yes, I completely understand that. No, that's amazing, and it makes sense that you need to balance competition shooting and jiu-jitsu. I mean, of course, they complement each other, I'm sure, but for the level at which you're training, I mean, that makes so much sense. And I'm excited to see your journey in that in jiu-jitsu alongside competition. Do you think in the future, once you kind of get past these matches, you'll start posting more jiu-jitsu content, or do you have any plans for that?
Yes, I will. I also I try to be in my lane. Like I try to post and really teach and do things that I'm good at. Like, for example, I do teach gun grappling and combatives to some different entities out there. Much like Craig Douglas, you mentioned him, South Narc, shout out to him. He's a fantastic instructor. One of the fathers of that particular deal. But so my year is, it's kind of phased out. So for example, right now I'm in a shooting phase. I'm very cautious even to do, like, I'll give you an example with my thumb. My thumb just got caught in a guy's rash guard. It wasn't a hard roll. This guy was not super good. We weren't going that hard, and it got bent backwards, Sophia, and I couldn't shoot. I couldn't hold a gun for 3 or 4 weeks. And then it was sore for 2 months. So I realized if I'm going to prioritize shooting or being able to go and get in front of a class of, elite level warriors, I need to be good at that. And then this October, for example, after I shoot the last match or the last big match, then I'm going to dive right back into BJJ, and I'll be there probably 5 days a week, and my combatives and lifting will go back up, and my shooting will go down to 2 or 3 days, of content development or maintenance. And, some of the firearms that I don't shoot a ton, maybe a little more rifle stuff, maybe some shotgun stuff. And I tend to kind of post what I'm focusing on that point in time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I was looking at your Instagram before we hopped on, and I saw where you said you were planning on posting more shotgun content. So I'm excited for that. I'm very much interested in 2-gun, and then of course, eventually 3-gun. I'm trying to space it out a little bit. So hopefully I'll shoot my first 2-gun match soon, but I've been working on some rifle dry fire training on the side in addition to pistol. So we'll see about that. Is that something you do as well? 2-gun, 3-gun?
I would be very interested in 2-gun, let me be specific, handgun carbine type matches. If they were more predominant out there, I would shoot a lot of that. And some of it exists, but it's not quite as popular as anything else. As far as the shotgun, I mean, I love multi-gun. I love 3-gun multi-gun. I respect it, but there's a point where it's so gear intensive, and to be a really competitive 3-gunner, you got to really geek out on the shotgun stuff, on the loading methods, on, the chokes of the shotgun. I mean, it's very intensive. And for me, it's much like trying back in the day when I was trying to do BJJ 3 or 4 days a week and shoot 3 or 4 days a week and lift or run 3 or 4 days a week. I'm like, I can't do it all. It's my focus. I'm good at everything, but I'm not great at anything. So that's kind of where 3-gun went the wayside. I shot the Nationals a few years back, or many years back, placed in the top 5. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, what do I really love and want to be good at? I love and want to be good at competitive shooting in the handgun divisions I'm in. Now, I do a ton of rifle shooting. I shoot a lot of rifle offline that a lot of people don't see, mainly because I need to be skilled to teach some of the guys I work with. So I'm pretty good at what we may say is a CQB distance rifle, 0 to 100 yards. I'm not a long range rifle shooter, although I love it and I have an interest in it. Like someday when I get older and bored, maybe I'll look at PRS. But that's honestly the reason I don't do a lot more 3-gunning is it just takes more time and it's a distractor. So unless you really want to be that, which I can't tell you I do, I like to focus on the one thing that I'm the best at, or I'm personally better at, and that's handgun related stuff. And also, a lot of my classes, competition handgun or defensive handgun, a lot of my students are, they want serious defensive type handgun coursework or whatever else. So it just fits a little bit better for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for the defensive handgun training, do you ever work out training from inside the waistband and combatives? Like
100%.
That?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done a ton of that. Yeah. I have done that. I teach that. I carry inside the waistband in the appendix position. As you know, because I've seen some of your posts, if you are carrying a firearm, and this is for the male shooter or female shooter, probably even more so the female shooter, and you're not willing to address the retention of the handgun and the combatives element and the fact that you may very likely be in close physical contact with someone before you ever have the opportunity to draw, I think you're missing a lot of it. And that's one of the things I teach and work with on a lot of students. And I also, we talked about my Instagram page and how I'm kind of real and raw. I also kind of, it's a frustration to see a lot of the things that are posted on Instagram from a gear perspective, but also to a perspective where guys and gals are doing these fast appendix draws and they're not addressing how a real fight may go down. And I'm not poo-pooing on what they're showing or what they're working on, but some of it is not as applicable in a multiple person and close range environment. But I do a lot of training. I do a lot of, I have a couple bobs out of my gym. I work strike. So I'm always, even if I'm not competing in it or doing it in class, I'm constantly working combatives and stuff that, you may be familiar with.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day about this. This is Kristen Irwin of the Healthy Buffalo. I actually met her at my first ECQC. She was so helpful. She was one of the only other females there, and we've been friends ever since. You kind of bond at ECQC. You lose a little dignity, gain a few friends, kind of thing. So anyway, so I met her, and we were talking about how there is a lack of that, and how I've even seen on my page, I'd say like 90% of my content is outfits pulling from concealment, and like the other 10% is like actual tactics. And a lot of that is because when I get the opportunity to train with a bob, and for those of you that don't know, a bob is basically like a humanoid punching bag, because I didn't know what that was for a while. But when I get the opportunity to train with the Bob and I'm sweaty and I have like a really chunky sweatshirt on to actually work the movement with something that is like has more, the concealment garment is like thicker than what I normally wear to like really train. I don't normally want to bust out my phone. I like to train and like use that time to really remember what I learned from ECQC. So the few times that I record it, I post it, and I feel like I'm lacking on that personally. And that's been one of my goals for 2023, like to start making it more like 80-20 outfits and gear and then instruction. But I'm trying to bring back that side because it was a rude awakening when I got to ECQC. It was just a whole new world of like marksmanship even meant very little in those situations, because at that point you're just using your indices. I'm trying to think of what it's called, your proprioceptive indices, like belly button, whatnot. So yes, I love that you brought that up. For anyone looking to take their training to the next level, like say a listener right now is kind of like realizing they've only ever drawn under perfect conditions, maybe with a timer to add a little bit of stress, what would you recommend to them to start kind of amping up that knowledge base and the actual tactical side?
Well, so let's make a distinction. The course you're talking about, whether Craig himself taught it or one of his instructors, that's a very intensive, close range course that deals with the contact side, like the physical contact side of getting a gun into a fight or a knife. He used a clinch pick into a fight, and it's a very nuanced, hardcore subject matter that people should probably investigate at a minimum. So I'll say that if you could take that course, do it. Anyone listening right now, he's a fantastic instructor. We have a couple of guys locally that developed a course for me at the U.S. Shooting Academy years ago. Mike Brown, Brandon Bennett, a guy local, Virgil Literal. Those are the guys that I trained with primarily. Then later on, I met Craig, but they had learned what they taught through him. So the lineage goes back to him. But the average person, if you don't want to take something like that, or maybe you can't, the steps that I would add beyond fundamental marksmanship, literally learning how to draw and get a one or two-handed grip, and then what I call build a good structure around the handgun, which improves your speed and accuracy. The other things you need to address are distance. So, for example, one of the things that I do in my class with, standard, simple SIRT pistols or red guns in the level 2 class is I have students line up and I have them extend their handguns and I have them present the handgun at full arm's length. And then I have them close the distance. And you'd be surprised at how many people that carry a gun on a regular basis or point the gun at someone will extend the gun right into someone else's arms, right? So I teach them how to collapse the gun to a close quarter position, then collapse the gun to what you might have learned as a pectoral index, or what I call an extreme close quarter position. And then we add another step and we address, okay, now if someone happens to get their hand on your gun, what do? And I steer people away from the gimmicky gadgetry of cool looking techniques that you and I might have seen in martial arts in the very beginning that don't really pan out and work. So what from a principle standpoint can we do to get someone's hand off our handgun? And that's the stuff that I think most people should address. And, I'd be foolish not to say that when we're talking about that close range circumstance, it's predominantly what we're in all the time. Like literally, folks, if you're carrying a gun right now, especially smaller, weaker females, and I'm not saying you're weak, I'm just saying you are smaller and weaker generally across the board, that physical contact and having a very high level of situational awareness and then decision-making skills, meaning I am situationally aware enough to recognize there might be a threat or I'm in an area I shouldn't be. And number two, I am intelligent enough to act on that awareness and leave, or get back in the car, or walk back in the store, or avoid the alley, or whatever else. If we could get that across to all of your listeners right now, we could wave a magic wand and teach them that, we would save 99% of them without them ever having to worry about drawing a handgun or thinking, and I don't know how big you are, Sophia, physicality. I've seen you're very athletic, but you don't want to end up in a dark alley with a guy like me on top of you trying to hurt you and then have to use the techniques that Craig teaches. That's not where you want to be, you know? Yes. And I was on the Best Defense for 7-8 seasons. And that's one of the things we constantly tried to teach on that TV show was we got to get people more situationally aware and teach them how to avoid these bad situations. That's way more valuable than hard skills with a handgun. I hope I didn't ramble on that answer, but
I want you to ramble actually, so that was perfect. And I'm actually 5'10", and I'll just tell you, I weigh about 180 pounds. I've got a lot of muscle, and it's always surprising. Like people are always surprised when I say I weigh that much, but muscle's heavy. And I've been weight training for 6 years. I've probably only been eating enough protein for the last year of my actual training. But just to like totally put it out there and be vulnerable. But yeah, I'm definitely a larger female. So it's been interesting in this journey. I've had some women reach out to me that are super petite, and I've not been able to. There have been some topics where I don't feel comfortable answering their questions. So I'll send them to someone like Tessa of Armed and Styled. And I'm trying to think of who else, but I have a few like go-to people. Tack Girl Michelle, sorry, I forgot her Instagram handle for a second. They're kind of shorter, more petite women. So their like concealed carry setup is different, and their approach to self-defense is also a little different. Like they emphasize things like that as well. So I'm totally in agreement with you. I think sometimes I forget that side a little bit when I think about the average person and the lack of training. Just because, and I'm sure you get this a lot when you just meet someone new and you tell them what you do, like the person will tell you that they do carry, but they've only ever shot a few times and then had their concealed carry license maybe and had to do that qual. So I guess when I think about that, I jump straight to, well, they need to start, training from inside the waistband, training close quarters. And then like for some reason, I tend to skip over the situational awareness, like the mental preparedness part, even though that's like in my personal curriculum. And that's a big thing I talk about on like TikTok, especially because I can't post anything about guns on there. So I talk a lot about the front side, the soft skills. But yes, I always appreciate that reminder on this podcast, because that was the goal of this podcast in the beginning, and it still is, to bring up those things that don't get talked about enough. So I appreciate you going into that.
Sure. And I want to make it clear to the audience that I'm not ever saying we shouldn't be diving very deeply into hard skills. And from your description of yourself and your physicality, you probably don't have to deal with some of the things that some of those lighter females have to deal with, weaker females or males for that matter. And you said something I hope that people pick up on, and I hope they hear this. I'm not, obviously I'm not a female. That's pretty obvious, right? On this, I would hope on this video, and I'm a 230 pound, I'll give it 51-year-old male that carries a lot of muscle as well. I think for my age, very fit, very strong across the board, but I literally constantly work on that. And if I were going to give anybody in the audience any advice, I'd say, hey, what are your personal metrics? Figure out what those are. Maybe we could start with your personal situational awareness and then your decision-making skills to avoid. But then when we get into both hard skills and physical fitness, address them. And even if that just becomes your passion and lifelong hobby, it's so fun. It's such an incredible thing, but it may also save your life. And, if you're a smaller male listener right now, or a smaller, weaker female, and you are afraid of being stronger, getting strong, and you are wrong. I hope you would mirror what I'm saying. They need to be big and strong. And I said, no, not big, not like, I know that comes across wrong to some female listeners, but no, just get mean and strong. And I think that is, by the way, so much more attractive anyways than something else. And I hope your audience hears that. That's a super important part of the process,
Absolutely. And of course, we're told by society, especially from a young age, that we need to be the smallest versions of ourselves. And then you look at the other side of that and, we're then blamed, for being attacked and not being prepared. So it's kind of interesting, that like true dichotomy. So I think that encouragement is great. I agree. I'm a personal trainer. I forgot to mention that, but I have my master's in exercise science and I'm a personal trainer. And I get so excited when I meet women who either A, have just never trained and they've never put on muscle in their life, or B, they just lost a bunch of weight and they're wanting to then put on muscle. And it's so exciting to see them fall in love with the muscle they put on their bodies because they were so worried about being big, but they're also tired of feeling kind of, like they can't handle their own. So it's really cool to see that empowerment. I think it's amazing, not only for physical well-being, but also mental well-being. So I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, and I heard what you said. You probably hadn't eaten enough protein for years. I'd be interested in hearing more about that because I've always been a meat eater, but I even myself and knowing all the things, and I am a self-educator. I listen to the podcasts, I read the books. I was a personal trainer many years ago. And I'm probably low on my protein level, especially for the amount of activity. And, I'll say this, one of the things that I found when I was doing BJJ and lifting and shooting, and one of the things I realized, I'm like, I am not recovering like I need to recover, because a shooting session for me is it's a fast, explosive draw. It's gripping hard. It's driving the gun hard. It may be a physical sprint to the next position where I'm squatting. It is not just stand and shoot and pull the trigger. It's a physical workout. So I have a little kind of it's like a wine and beer fridge, but it's stock full of protein shakes right now. I have
wonderful.
I love that. I love that you said that. Yeah, that's important. Super important, especially for the female audience as well, I think so. Absolutely.
Yes. I tend to get a lot of females that they always tell me they want to tone. And what I always tell them is, what I hear when they say that is they want to change their body composition. So they want to do body recomp. And so what's interesting is I'll have them track their food with me for 7 to 10 days. And I'll usually see that they're eating essentially a cracker a day. And I always tell them we can't go down, I'm being dramatic, but I always tell them we can't go down to half a cracker. We have to build up, right? And bring your body to a place where it's at metabolic maintenance. And then when we're there and we stay there for a while, we can then talk about going into a caloric deficit. But yeah, it's interesting to see they're only eating like 20, 30 grams of protein a day. And they for a woman who weighs, anywhere from 100 pounds to 120 pounds, they need to be eating like 80, 90 grams.
I was going to say double that at least.
Yes, absolutely. So, and they're always blown away, but it's really lovely. And this is one of my favorite parts of being a personal trainer. It's so amazing to see them cure their relationship with food and see the recovery that they get from actually nourishing their body. Because there's this misconception that muscle is broken down and built in the gym when it's very much built back in the kitchen and nutrition. So I appreciate you sharing that yourself, and good for you. I love that you're balancing your protein and your beer.
I have to. Yeah. I'm chasing all these young guys and gals. So I have to. I'm like, I'm gonna be that old dude way back there with the gray beard that you're not watching out for. Here I come. Come on, you young little fast shooters.
Absolutely. Yes. It sounds like you have a really good spread of training. Like you have your fully intensive training, and then you have grappling, which is, I would say it's a mixture between high intensity and endurance. Like it's a very good mixture from my experience, at least.
Well, yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, since you're a trainer, I mean, you understand that all the different, adaptations in fitness you can get into, but with grappling, you could kind of choose, if you are training and you go into the roll phase of the grappling, I can choose if I'm like, I'm kind of beat up and I want to get some longer, slow cardio and pick a partner and roll slow and easy for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I know that sounds like a long time, but if you're being smart and you have the right partner, you can do that. Or you want to work the intervals that we would normally do running or on an echo bike or a cycle or whatever else. We'll kick it up, go a minute hard and a couple of minutes, take a couple of minutes off or stop and run laps. So I try to apply all those things. I try to stay as educated as I possibly can. My wife, beautiful, was a fitness trainer when I met her. She was doing competition. She got out of that. She's in a totally different business, but she recently just started doing meal prep again and eating a lot more. And, it made a dramatic difference, and she's starving all the time, and her metabolism is probably where it needs to be. And she knows all these things as well. We just tend to get on different tracks. And I think sometimes we fall off, and, I geek out on, everybody sees me as a sponsored shooter, which I am, but I geek out on, fitness and programming and performance. And I do literally a weekly Google sheet where I do my fitness and my shooting programming for the week. And I make myself do that. And it changes everything, because then you have to hold yourself accountable. And I can also see my weekly trends over the past, and I can tweak things and modify things. So
I love that you use Google Sheets for that. That is amazing. I used to do that, and I dropped off. I have a coach right now, so she's kind of she has her own app and everything. But I should get back on the Google Sheets thing, especially for dry fire accountability. Because that's something, especially I just moved across the state, and we were renovating our home and living with my in-laws, so soon to be in-laws. So it's been a crazy journey, and I'm in a place finally where I have the time to dry fire, so I need to get into that for sure.
You could also, if you think about this, and this is one of the things that we're going to do at a very big level with the live fire app. We can talk about that later. But with my programming, it's like fitness. You may look at a fitness week and say, okay, I'm going to do 2 or 3 days of strength specific training, and then I'm going to try to hit 2 days of what we may name long, slow cardio for simpler terms. And then, 1 or 2 days a week, I really want to push and work on my VO2 max, maybe with some sort of interval, or maybe my max heart rate, so you could do the same thing with your dry and live fire training. So if you look at my dry and live fire training, it might be, what we call, fundamental long range or standards. So that way it's just stationary shooting, but I'm working at 20, 30, 40 yards, maybe strong and support hand. 1 day is movement. Like one of my buddies started doing movement Monday. So now I do movement Monday. 1 day is literally transitioning the handgun. And this could be applicable to handgun or rifle. So Tuesday is transition Tuesday. And then, so I rotate through those very specific things. And you can do the same thing with dry fire. Let's say you're doing on live fire, we call it get your 50, right? Get your 50 every day. Get your 50 reps every day. But every day has a different focus. So maybe 1 day is your appendix draw. 1 day you're doing a slide lock load. 1 day you're doing a malfunction clearance. 1 day you're doing one-handed stuff only, or pick up off of a table, or maybe a quick access safe, work the reps on that. So you could do the same thing. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really like that. And if you would like to go ahead and talk about live fire now, I would be happy to hear about it.
Okay, so I'm actually in the studio. For some of you that see kind of part of this video, you would actually have to see it to believe it. It looks, to describe our studio, looks like a Fox 2 studio, but the live fire is kind of interesting. Years ago, probably 3 years ago, a buddy of mine said, hey, there's these two guys developing an app in your area, and they're looking for investors, and they're looking for someone to talk to about this. And I kind of, honestly, I blew it off. I hope they can't hear that in the other room. Anyways, so fast forward a year later, my buddy comes back to me and says, hey, they have this thing built. You really should go meet with them and check it out. I'm like, okay. Because I was thinking about building my own app. I mean, I have a couple of membership sites and had been selling content. So I went and met him. One guy is the designer. He does all the pretty stuff. And one guy is the programmer. They've been doing apps for many years and doing things, and they built a tool that was fantastic. And so the bottom line is, if you could think about live fire, it's like, you're familiar with Masterclass, the professional educational tool Masterclass, where you can take a cooking class or take an acting class. Live fire is kind of like,
actually, yes. Sorry, it took me a second.
Yeah, so if you took Masterclass and Peloton, like that biking kind of deal, maybe, and they had a baby and bought guns, it'd be something like that. That's why the studio is so robust. I mean, it's a professional level studio. They're about to release a bunch of cool features. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to go public, but I'll tell you, kind of hint at it. It's basically similar to the groups feature in Facebook. I mean, with the app itself, I won't pull up my phone because the camera probably wouldn't do it justice. I think you're on it. Are you on Livefire right now?
Yes. Well, I what I can do is when I post this clip, I can drop like a video of the app in the screen. Probably.
Yeah. If not, we'll send you a screenshot. But basically, it's got a lot of different training aspects. It's got a bunch of dry fire drills, a bunch of live fire drills. A lot of that is predominantly me because we haven't brought as many other instructors into the studio. It's got a full logbook, which I like because I can pull up any one of my training logs over the last 2 years. I've got almost 100,000 rounds of training logged. I can look at literally the weather, which self-populates. I can look at the drill I did. I can look at the times on the drills. So it's really cool. So from content to dry fire and live fire training. So you watch the content to drills. Okay. How do you actually work the skill? Then you can click run drill. And when you run the drill, then you can click log the results, and you can log your results. And then you can historically go back. And then most importantly, it's got a true gun friendly social feed. So you can post and connect with other people. And as we both know, I mean, we met on social, this will be posted on social. Everything is about that connection. But in a manner where, like, I don't think I've ever seen a negative comment on Livefire Social. I know when we grow and grow and grow, maybe that's going to happen, but it's finally that gun friendly culture, and a true professional level training tool that has a bunch of other features that are coming soon that are just going to blow people's minds. So
that sounds amazing. And yes, I actually met, the two gentlemen, and actually I met more than that. I remember I thought I was hopping on a Zoom call with one of the people from Livefire, but it was a whole conference room, and it was 5 people, and I was definitely taken back, but I was also so excited, so that kind of overpowered that. But I was so excited to hear what they were doing. I was right in the middle of finishing my master's, and now I've moved. So I feel like I've been blowing it off, but I really am excited to go and visit the facility and hear more about it, and eventually be part of it. So if you're listening, listener, and you are excited for that as well, definitely check out their app. Their app and their social media. If you just want to see their social media in the meantime, they have a lot of instructional videos that give you a little bit more detail without you having to download the app yet if you're kind of hesitating right now. But I will link their information as well in the show notes. So from my understanding, you have courses available from yourself, and then do you give homework as well from those courses and like an assignment following the course?
I do, and it depends. It depends on whether or not you do some of my programs digitally or if you actually do them in person. Now, I, in the past, have traveled. That was predominantly what I did. I traveled and taught, but I have, 3 different books that I've authored on shooting training, competition handgun, defensive rifle, and 1 book on instructing called The Art of Instruction. It's actually kind of in my opinion, a hidden gem that I don't really promote or talk about a lot, but it's what I learned through my 21 years of being a full-time firearms instructor. So I put those out there. So when you're done with the course, you get a series of videos to do and work the drills. My goal in my courses is not just to run some drills. My goal is always to, educate people on the skills, the hard skills, work a specific drill with them to practice that hard skill to the point where they know now how to take that drill and train on their own. Because let's face it, if you take a 2-day class with me, you're not going to have good retention, and myelination of that skill. You need to then go practice, whether it's in dry fire or live fire or scenario training, those things. And typically that's what people take my digital program as a follow along tool or whatever else and follow that. And I have, some digital programs that are literally, you open up a session, you watch the video, then you go do the drill, then you log your results. In live fire, it's the same thing. Live fire actually allowed me to take a lot of my content and put it in a format that really is presentable on a phone or a digital device that we would actually have on the range with us, which is cool. And then log the results. I have a physical logbook. The beauty of Livefire is I don't ever fill physical logs out anymore. I have the digital one that I could search through and I could find out exactly what the session is I was looking for. So
that is incredible. And I do completely mirror you when it comes to the retention factor. My biggest example is ECQC, I think just because it made such a big impression on me. I went to Knife Control Concepts after ECQC as well with Aaron Janetti and Eli Knight, and I retained very little from that course because I've trained it a lot less than I have the concepts from ECQC. So having an app to keep track of training and also get like refreshers every now and then is just the most helpful tool I've heard of in a really long time. So that's so exciting to hear. And I feel like I have a better understanding of it myself now as well. So.
And I didn't, so one thing that I think would be interested in a lot of probably your audience. So right now we've been doing kind of informally this weekly programming. So since you're in fitness, you would understand that your weekly programming would be the physical things you're doing that would cause some sort of adaptation, that whether you're getting stronger or trying to improve your cardiovascular fitness, whatever that is. Now, we're not doing 5 days a week because we don't have the ability to produce that much content yet. But right now I'm doing a weekly programming drill. And so, for example, this weekly programming, I think we're in week 8 or week 9. I started off with the bullseye drill. Like it's a simple 5 or 10 shot bullseye drill for high level, accuracy. And then we added a par time to the bullseye drill, which is like a start and stop time. And then we increased the distance to the bullseye drill. So each of these drills falls within a training phase. So let's just say the first training phase is fundamental accuracy. The next training phase was presentation and grip building skills. The next training phase was draw process. The next training phase was trigger speed. So I'm taking all of these different chunks of these drills and applying them much like you would in fitness training. Because, if you want to get stronger, you need to be doing things that will make you stronger. Same thing in shooting it. Well, if you want to be more accurate, then your focus that day in the range should be a drill that will allow you to work on fundamental accuracy, not drawing. We could do that in dry fire, but maybe you want to add the draw later on. So it's kind of cool. That's something that, when you get in the app, you should check out, because then you can also log and post, and you could post your score. And we all know that we love to compare scores. Like, hey, how much can you bench? What can you lift? What can you run? Right. What can you shoot? What can you draw? So it's pretty cool. So
that does sound amazing. Yes. And I will at some point, I'm already getting ideas on like how I can kind of share that process. I'm actually starting to teach at a range in town called Ozark Sportsman. And they have a really awesome indoor facility. So I could definitely see myself like going and utilizing the app there. So that's really exciting. Something I get nervous about and I am not an experienced like competition shooter by any means. I need to do the math, but I think it's been close to like eight months of competing now. I'll probably look back and realize that's totally wrong, but I've only been to 6 competitions so far. My 7th is this coming weekend. And I still get nervous when I go to the range on my own, because I think I wonder if my plan is an efficient one. Having some guidance would be so nice. So I can't imagine how someone feels when they don't have like a goal to work on when it comes to like competition and just like everyday goals. So how would you say your program is broken down? Do you do things for competition training as well, or is it all kind of lifestyle-based concealed carry?
No, my first book was a competition book. It was your competition handgun training program. So whether or not you buy the physical book or you have my physical book, and it's interesting hearing you say that. One interesting video series that I did, by the way, I do these drills in every single class I teach, or what I call the fundamental 5, and I kind of I put the FUN in caps, so it's like fundamental 5, right?
Yeah.
But I use them in both competition handgun classes and defensive handgun classes. The fundamental 5, also called competition handgun fundamentals or defensive handgun fundamentals, are both in the app itself. But those drills are really the foundational drills that you should be focusing on to develop a high level of shooting skill. Literally building a good structure and firing the gun with speed and accuracy. But then, depending on what sport you do, I don't know if you're competing in USPSA or IDPA. I have, the USPSA Mastery Program and the IDPA Mastery Program. Those are my They were some of my original standalone programs, and they're literally session by session. So you wouldn't go to the range, Sophia, and wonder what to do. You'd be like, okay, I know I'm on session 8. I'm going to do this drill, and I'm going to do this dry fire drill. Or if you didn't accomplish what you wanted to, you would simply repeat that pattern or path drill. And those are in live fire as well. So we'll make sure we let you check that out and get you access. They're fully in the app right now. So
that is so exciting. Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes. And so for someone who's listening and maybe they're not wanting to compete, but they want to take their training to the next level, would you say they should just go ahead and check out the live fire app and scroll through and find what fits them best and kind of move from there and like create a lesson plan almost for themselves that way?
I don't think they would go wrong by doing that. Certainly I think the things that it offers right now, because it starts at a very fundamental level. Like there are, from the competition side, there's the competition handgun fundamentals, there's IDPA mastery, there's USPSA mastery, and there's also a PCC program in the app itself. There's also a dry fire follow along program that we're going to reshoot in this studio that I shot on my own, where you literally follow along in this dry fire routine. So maybe you want to work on your draw or your concealed draw, or your reload. You can literally follow it along and do it along with me. And we're going to have an entire series of dry fire follow along videos. And honestly, it's funner. The bottom line is people want to do fun stuff. It's funner than just sitting there by yourself, listening to a timer or whatever else. So
yes,
they can't go wrong. If they're looking for content, whether they want to start at the fundamental level or they want to jump right into, let's say, defensive handgun, because my defensive handgun program is in there as well, it wouldn't certainly hurt. Certainly, they can check out my books, Google Seeklander on Amazon, and they can pick the context they're trying to train in. Maybe it's competition, maybe it's defensive handgun, maybe they have a defensive rifle they want to learn how to use. I mean, I have certainly a program on that, which happens to be in the app. A lot of things you'll see on my original, website and my original membership areas are on Livefire. So.
That's wonderful. Yes, thank you for Thank you for elaborating on that. I really appreciate that. And you're exactly right. The studio is beautiful. It makes my background look so lame. I need to improve it so much. I have some plans though, because I have a big office now. Before I was living in like a 450 square foot studio, and so my office was like the corner of the living room, and now I have like my own room. So I need to take some notes from your guys. I mean, it looks amazing.
Well, full disclosure, I was going to record this in my home office, which doesn't look much, and then they're like, well, why don't you come in here and do it? I'm like, oh, okay, duh. It's 9 minutes down the road from me, literally now. I just moved closer. But here, I'll throw this out to you for you and we need to get you here. Yes. And shoot some of your stuff or do some of your podcasts in the studio. When you see it in person, trust me, you kind of see it, but when you walk in here, you'll be like, oh, wow, okay, I get it now.
That is so exciting. Absolutely. It's definitely, I'm getting married in like a week and a half. So besides the marriage and, the wedding and family and stuff, it is one of my priorities. So I'm very excited, and I feel very honored that you all have invited me down to be part of it. Really very excited. Are there any other instructors on the app alongside you right now?
Right now we have Ernest Langdon is on the app. He's got a bunch of series. We have, Fabio's on the app for a couple of different tips, and then we have a bunch of other stuff on the lineup that we want to add as well. So, hey, once again, you're on our short list, because we don't have a lot of great instructional content, from a female for the female audiences in terms of carry methods and thought processes. And the real truth is, things that I don't, and maybe I know things that some of your audience doesn't know. And that's why we want to, it's one big tent where we welcome anybody that's teaching anything. And the only vetting point you have to get through is me. That's my job here. I'm the director of training. So I vet and make sure that, hey, this is a true pro. They have something good to say. They're not, there's a lot of free stuff out there that's just not good stuff, to be honest with you. And that's my only job is to bring good people in.
Thank you. I feel so honored. Seriously. I appreciate you. I'm excited to meet you in person as well. I'm sure you'll be surprised at how tall I am. So that's one of the first things I get when people meet me. They're like, "Oh, you're so tall," and it's like, "Yeah, I'm sitting in a chair during the podcast," and it's kind of funny. But I'm definitely excited to see you all. And I think Fayetteville is only about 2 hours from Tulsa, so
yeah, you're not very far away at all. It's very close. So
there's no excuse. So I will grab a coffee and drive down there very soon. Wonderful. So as far as your long-term goals go with competition and instruction, what would you say those are? So anywhere between like now and 5 years, whatever you'd like to share.
Oh, good question. So in terms of competition, I'm gonna keep grinding. I want to be as competitive as I can in carry optics. I am, unfortunately, hate to say this, in one of the sports, I'm actually old enough to be in the senior division. I cringe when I say that. In another one of the sports, I'm a few years later from the senior division. Don't even say anything, Sophia. Just leave that where it is. Okay. But I want to be as competitive in overall as I possibly can. So I'll keep grinding and keep pushing. I won't stop. Like I said, I need an athletic endeavor to train for. And more importantly, from the shooting perspective and competing, I'm still constantly learning, whether it's carry optics. Now that everybody's shooting guns with optics on them, there's something to learn, and that drives my teaching. So what I'm training for typically drives, my teaching. Many years ago, I started doing Facebook Lives for free, and one of the goals was to give free information out to educate as many people as I could. And my goal was to reach 1 million people. I'm like, I want to reach 1 million people. So let me make it free. Let me help them overcome any obstacles. There's no money. You don't have to come to me. You don't have to pay for a motel. You don't have to buy a book. Just do these things for free. And then I happen to literally, they're in the same town as me, which is weird, bump into live fire. So I think from my professional educator standpoint, that's my next goal, is to take this thing. And, full disclosure, it's a for-profit app. So it's not like we're out here giving live fire stuff for free. The studio was not free to build, but it's a great social media platform and training tool that I hope will help me finally reach that millionth person. If I haven't probably reached 1 million people yet, but that's my goal. And just to educate, just to keep teaching good stuff, and to help other educators, maybe like yourself. I mean, I'm an instructor trainer, so I teach an instructor course. So I think I can relay some of the things I've learned as an instructor on to other instructors. So
absolutely. Yes. I would love to take a course from you in person. Do you have a current, what am I trying to say? A schedule right now for the rest of 2023?
I do. If you go to my website, you can find it, but I will tell the people listening right now, full disclosure, it's not very robust, mainly because of my current role with Livefire. Actually, they're paying me to not travel as much to help them develop their programs here. So I do have a few courses out there people can find. There's actually one that's not far from you that's in the Armed Women of America conference, I think, but it might be full. I'm not positive. There's a few others out there. And then I'm going to add some more in this area, potentially late summer. But really, my focus shifted from last year to this year to focusing really on helping develop content and as well as instructors for Livefire. That
sounds incredible. I love that. And I love that you came from a place of purely just wanting to help, and then you just happened upon, this app that's trying to make such a difference. And I meant to say this earlier, but it's so nice that there's going to be a social media platform that isn't as censored as the ones we currently have, because it's getting ridiculous. On TikTok the other day, I had to use a tube of toothpaste to share my gun and holster. And while it was funny, and I'm sure it got some views just based on the fact that I was laughing about the toothpaste, it was, it's not the same. So.
Yeah, and it's just going to get worse. And that's one of the things I told them a long time ago, because their social area was initially specifically just designed so the only way to post was to do a drill and to share training related content or your drill, right? And I'm like, well, I love that. and the reason behind that is they didn't want it to go down the normal social media rabbit hole of everybody's posting foolishness. I'll just say it like that. But now where I think we're at the point where we recognize that with the right people on the app and all of the people that will flock to Livefire, because it is the first apolitical, firearms-centric, and friendly app out there. So we try not to, we're not interested in getting into political arguments. We're not interested in being negative and naysayers. We're just interested in promoting good gear, good training, and good people from an instructor and a student standpoint. That's what we want to get people a big tent to get under. And it's going to go because another problem is where people host material is, back in the day, I hosted material on Udemy. I had material on, YouTube. Udemy completely kicked me off as an educator because of firearms related material. So, and we'll tell you more about the group thing coming up maybe in a new meeting, because it offers instructors the ability to post their own content and then offer premium content if they want. So it's really a next level feature. It's pretty cool, coming out in a couple of weeks. So
that sounds so exciting. And maybe we could just make this a part 1 and do a part 2 in the studio.
I'm telling you, we'll follow up. I'm telling you, you're going to see yourself in here soon. So
that sounds wonderful. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners before we go today?
No, give me a follow on Instagram if you want, or follow me. And also I will say this, I am very easy and accessible to reach. So if you're like, hey, I want to ask Mike Seeklander a question about this, if you're a Livefire, great. But if not, DM me on Instagram or send my help email and I will get back to you. I don't have a huge amount of followers. I have quite a few, but I've always believed in being that person that is being accessible. I mean, there are a lot of really famous gun people out there that are not accessible. That will never, ever, ever be me. So, hey, give me a follow. And if you have a question, if I can help you out or see you on the range sometime, give me a shout and say hi.
I love that. Absolutely. Yes. You got back to me so quickly. I wasn't surprised, but normally it takes a while to reach out to people and get a response. So yes. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to part 2.
Yeah, me too. We'll set it up maybe here in the studio.
Sounds great. And yes, if you're interested in accessing Livefire information and all of Mike's information, I'll also link all of his books in the show notes, including his hidden gem. You can just scroll down and see all those links there. For exclusive video content, you can become a Patreon. You'll receive a thank you note and podcast stickers along with more exclusive content. In the meantime, you can visit SheShield on Instagram and TikTok for show updates, pictures of our guest speakers, and podcast highlights. Thank you to Sagetta Gear, the official sponsor of SheShield, for concealed carry gear and duty gear. You can use code SheShield10 for 10% off your Sagetta Gear order and to support the pod. All resources mentioned are linked, and if you like the pod, you can help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a crisis, look into holdmyguns.org. They are an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you in the time of crisis. The link to access their website is below. It will help you find a storage location or partner in order to get you through a hard time. In the meantime, thank you for listening. Stay safe and stay vigilant.